So, over the last couple years, I've been paying professionals to drive me around in vehicles worth over $1 million. How have you been getting around? I don't know if you noticed this. Oof. Nope. Hi, my name is Rinahra, and in the recent years I have ascended from the shackles of car ownership and into a lifestyle of living car-free. But let me first tell you how I got here. Growing up in the suburbs, there was really one thing keeping me from hanging out with all of my friends. 7 miles of land with no streetlights, no sidewalks, or reliable public transit. As you can imagine, it is a pedestrian's worst nightmare. So naturally, I was counting down the days until I turned 16 because in my state, Washington State, that's the earliest you can get a driver's license after passing driver's ed as well as the driver's test. Now, long story short, I remembered going through the motion of driver's ed. It was one of those things where you pass if you just show up. The driver's test, however, I actually ended up failing it the first time because I couldn't even parallel park. But I was able to pass it the second time by the grace of God in the form of a really chill test proctor. At the age of 16, I earned this newfound freedom that I wanted so bad as a kid, sponsored by my parents' amazing 2009 Toyota Corolla. And as you can imagine, I'm driving around in the burbs, going to the places I wanted to go to. I was free and living my teenage dream, Katy Perry fantasy. By the time I had to move for college around 2 hours away, I was so sad because I had to leave my car behind because it wasn't even my car in the first place, thanks parents. And at the time, as a broke college student, I couldn't afford a car outright. So I ended up going car-free, not by choice. If you're enjoying this video so far, why don't you give this video a big thumbs up to help out the channel? I'd really appreciate it. It's free and it means a lot to me. Anyways, on with the video. So when I left for college, this was actually my first time going to the school and checking out the town. First day I was dropped off and I was pretty much fending for myself from that point on, living and breathing Google Maps just to navigate around. And after around a week or so, I realized that this school was located in the definition of a college town. And to give you an idea of what a college town looks like, a lot of the infrastructure in the city is built around the school. So that means lots of well-lit sidewalks around the campus, lots of good public transit going through the campus, and downtown is walking distance from the campus itself. So basically this is like the ideal town for a young adult or college student. A month into living in this college town, I realized I didn't miss having a car. Like, I realized I didn't really need one. And honestly, getting one of those quarterly parking passes at the university costs the same amount as tuition, so I figured, why would I give consent to scam myself? No thank you, so I put my car dreams on hold for the time being. Not owning a car was still a foreign concept to me because I was raised on the idea that owning a car is an American right, and everyone who wants to be a functioning adult should own one. But that's actually not the case. I grew out of this mindset once I sat down and really thought about the pros and cons of owning a car. Well, pros, they can get you to point A to point B, but cons... Well, to start off, cars are unpleasant. Driving them, being around them, the noise they create, whack. I used to be the type of person who thought I didn't mind driving, but it never really hit me how much stress and anxiety driving gave me until I stopped altogether. A lot of driving is associated with psychological distress, mental health problems, and overall a lower quality of life. It's a nightmare to sit in traffic, deal with bad drivers, and finding parking. Oh my gosh, finding parking. In a way, owning a car is kind of like having a child. Think about it. We need to know where it is at any given time, we have to make sure we're cleaning it regularly, and we always have to check up if there's fuel in the tank. Now, if you ask me, I can hardly shower regularly. How can you expect me to take care of another entity? Cars are really, really, really expensive. There comes a point where the benefits you get from owning a car doesn't outweigh the costs of owning a car. When I first moved out to Seattle for work, I was in a fortunate enough position to be given an option. Rent a place in the suburbs where it was affordable enough to let me own a car, or live in the city where it costs an arm and a leg just to afford parking. Which honestly sounds like a no-brainer to most people, but for me, I decided to move to the city because I'm in my early 20s and I was brainwashed by Gossip Girl about city life. So what I actually ended up doing was getting a roommate, and what getting a roommate actually meant was I was essentially paying suburb rent prices for living in the city. With that being said, I did have some criteria for where I wanted to live in the city. Besides just the budget, I wanted to live walking distance from a grocery store, and I also wanted to live walking distance from frequent transit, whether it be buses or light rail. I set those criteria in mind so I can restructure my life in a way where I didn't really need to own a car. Now, I don't actually remember how much money I was spending on owning a car when I was in high school, but after doing a quick Google search, I'm seeing that on average, the true financial cost of owning a car is $9,282 annually, or $773 a month. Even on the more conservative estimate, it's around $400 to $500 a month after factoring in car payments, gas, insurance, car tabs, and general maintenance. Which got me thinking, theoretically, if someone my age were to take the money they saved from going car-free and put them in index funds earning 8% interest each year, that person would have around $2.3 million by the time they retire at the age of 62. Well, that's also assuming that retirement is still a possibility and the world doesn't implode on itself by 2050 due to our quickly deteriorating environment, which brings me to my next point. On this Earth, we have around 10 years to cut our global emissions in half before the Earth undergoes some irreversible environmental damages. Think like hotter summers, colder winters, worsening air quality, etc. The biggest contributor to climate change for the average US household is actually burning car fuel. When I owned a car, I drove literally every time I left the house. Groceries? I'm driving to the store. Exercise? I'm driving to the gym. Work? I'm probably driving there and paying $20 to $30 on parking because cities are expensive. And it never really crossed my mind that there were alternative methods to getting places, like biking, taking public transit, or honestly just walking, which are all more eco-friendly than driving a car. I used to think that getting a Tesla, or honestly any electric vehicle, would be the solution to this issue, but after doing a little bit more research, it seems like that might not be the case. A large chunk of the carbon emissions that are produced in an electrical vehicle's lifetime happens before it's even driven its first mile, in the manufacturing process. And the reason being, there's a lot of oil being burned in the drilling process to get the rare materials needed to produce the electric car batteries. Over the course of an electric vehicle's lifetime, it will produce less carbon emissions than its traditional gas-burning counterparts. However, after factoring in the carbon emissions that are produced at the manufacturing process, the difference is not significant enough to slow down climate change. Not to mention that they're pricier and honestly uglier than the traditional car. And because of that, I haven't really considered electric vehicles as a viable option.
Hey, it's Rin from the future, slightly dusty, slightly crusty, and using my laptop microphone, so apologies for the quality. I just wanted to hop on and say that electric vehicles are a fantastic option for people living in areas where driving is the only way for transportation. It is better than the traditional car in terms of emissions, and the technology is only getting better. However, in areas where driving isn't the only option, say big cities or metro areas, there are better alternatives if the major concern is environmental impact.
This isn't really me stepping on a soapbox and saying that we should get rid of cars altogether because that'll help fight climate change. That's honestly not going to happen. It's more so being open to the idea of replacing traditional car trips with more eco-friendly alternatives. Think like biking to the closest grocery store or taking public transit to work instead of driving to the city. But even living car-free, there are times where I would still need a car to do those one-off trips. Those one-off trips could include going to Costco because my body is fueled by $5 rotisserie chicken, going hiking to live my granola girl fantasies, and even renting a car to pick up furniture off the side of the street because how else am I going to furnish my apartment? Now, this isn't so much a reason, but a cool benefit I noticed after ditching the car. I've been moving my body so much more since ditching the car, whether it be through walking or biking. That being said, I've been blowing through deodorant like nobody's business, so deodorant companies, please sponsor me. Like, I used to drive to go to the gym to work out, but now if I wanted to exercise, all I have to do is walk to the gym and walk back. I wouldn't even have to set foot in the gym because the walk itself would be my exercise. Also, another thing, surprisingly enough, time. Time is something that feels like we never have enough of. When I used to drive the same commute every day, either to work or to school, I would go through this thing where I would drive from point A to point B, but have absolutely no recollection of the drive itself. However, time has still passed. And apparently there's a name for it. Highway hypnosis. For those who don't know, highway hypnosis is when you're in an altered state of mind, when you can drive a vehicle safely on autopilot, yet have no recollection of consciously doing so. On a daily basis, the average driver drives around 1 hour every day. Now, if you asked me, I would rather spend an hour walking or biking because at least I'd feel more present in the time that I'm traveling. Now, in a lot of cases, it actually makes sense to own a car, like if you live in the countryside or you don't have easy access to good public transit. And in these cases, having a car is the only way to get around. Like, it wouldn't really make sense to ditch your car when the closest bus stop has buses coming every 30 minutes. And I recognize that I'm in a really fortunate position where I live in a city where having a car is not a necessity. Do I get judged for it? Honestly, sometimes. Even in Seattle, the greater majority of households own at least one car, so the expectation is to still drive to the places that you want to go to. However, in cities and metro areas where there is good infrastructure for walking, biking, or taking public transit, opting out of car ownership and maintenance should be considered as a viable option. And with that, I will end the video. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving this video a thumbs up to help out the channel. I'd really appreciate it, and consider subscribing if you want to see more content like this in the future. Anyways, thanks for watching. Toodles! Now, for those of you who have made it this far into the video, I have a fun little treat for you. This shirt is actually a pair of leggings that I just cut around the neck. It's mad raggedy, but the reason why I did that is because there was a hole in the crotch. Alright, I'll see you next time. Bye.